If you're new to Webflow, this video will teach you the basics by building a real website with me step by step. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Olisa and I'm a web designer. I help entrepreneurs optimize their websites for better conversions. I've also been making videos on this channel about design, strategy, and no-code tools. So whether you're a creative or a business owner, you will find value here. Now, this is a two-part session build. So by the end of this video, you'll have built the top part of a clean homepage inside Webflow. From the hero section to the about section, you'll understand the core tools that you use again and again. Now, I've also added the assets that I use for the build in the description, so you can download them and build along. Now, let's dive straight into the Webflow canvas. All right, this is the Webflow canvas. And if you don't already have a Webflow account, you need to create a free account to be able to get 2 free sites to be able to build. So if you don't already have the account, just head over to webflow.com. And when you head over to webflow.com, this is what you're going to see. Just click on Get Started for free. And when you click on this, it's going to prompt you to fill a couple of forms and just to get you started and ask you a couple of questions. Now, when you're done, it's going to bring you to your workspace. So your workspace is basically where you have access to all the sites that you build, and especially if you have paid sites. So if you have a paid plan, then you have more than 2 sites. But if you have a free plan, then you're limited to 2 sites. So when you get to this particular point, what you do is you create a new site. So when you click on this, Webflow has an AI builder. Also has a template. So if you have a template or you want to get started with a particular template, you select this. And then if you want AI to help you out to build out the website, and then you select AI site builder. But what we're going to do today is to build it from a blank site. So basically you click on blank site, and then it's going to prompt you to select the name of the site, and then you put it and then click on create site. So now when you create the site, what you would want to do is to come back to your workspace and make sure that certain settings are set on the site. So we would want to add when you want to add some of the assets, so you basically need to come to these 3 dots and click on it and head over to settings. Once you're in settings, this is basically where you're going to set some of the favicons and the clips for social media and for web browser. Also publishing plans that you select, and then site usage, SEO, and likes. However, where you get to add some of the assets that you use on the website is the fonts. So basically you click on the fonts, click on upload font. So once you're done with all of that, head over to your dashboard. This is the Webflow canvas where we're going to make the magic happen. Now, if you look on the left, this white space is where we build basically, and then on the left you have the navigator where we're going to add a couple of div blocks, and when you start building you get to see a couple of things going down on this side. But this plus sign is for us to add elements, and the page is for you to access the pages on the website, and then navigator as well for you to get back to this port. Components basically are reusable assets that you want to have, for example a header or a footer. And then variables are very, very important, and we're going to come back to that later. And then assets, so style selectors, basically this is where all the CSS will be nested in. And then assets, so basically these are all the documents and the files that we're going to use for the website build. And for the assets that you're going to download from the description, you're going to upload it from this particular button. So when you click on this button, then it's going to prompt you to select the folder from your computer, and then you upload it, and then you're good to go. And over on the right is your style settings and interaction settings as well. So this is where you get to set up, the CSS for any particular build that you're currently working on, and also the interactions, animations, and also custom attributes in case you want to write some code or have things connected to a particular code. This website build, we're not going to do anything code with it, so it's just basically building and designing, drag and drop basically. And I'm going to, as we go on, I'm going to explain the things that we'll be doing. If you look at the top, this is where you get to see your collections, so the CMS, and then the analytics, the play, just to see what we're doing. You have the breakpoints, localization. So also down here, you also have the breakpoints as well. So you have the desktop. So whatever we're building on this particular breakpoint is for laptops and bigger screens. Then you have for iPad, have for landscape for mobile phone, and then you have vertical forms for mobile phone basically. And these has different forms as well, different breakpoints as well. But once we are building in this, it basically applies to all. So back to desktop version where we are going to build for, where we're going to, is going to be the base sort of where we're going to build from. One thing that I would want to touch on is variables. So variables is very, very important. And I do this every time that I want to start building on Webflow or building any particular project anywhere on any builder, is that I make sure that I set aside not just my assets, but also the colors, the typography that I'm going to use for that particular project, the spacing, everything. And this is why we have variables, because I do not want to be changing and switching each of the numbers, for every particular CMS collection or for every particular div, and then I have to switch. So what variables does is that it enables me to make those changes once and it applies it everywhere. So before we start, again, if you look at the downloads that you have, you would see a couple of numbers for variables. So that is what we're going to do. Now, when you hit on variables, you're going to see all of this. What you're going to see is your base collection from your own end. You're not going to see either of this. I'm going to set up one of the variables just so you can see how to set it up, and hit on this plus sign. Now I'm going to do a variables for color. So I'm just going to type, name it color. This is the part where I get to add the colors that I want to use for the build. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this part and click on new variable and select color, and then I'm going to type swatch/white. So basically all the variables that I'll be creating from now on will now be under swatch. Now I can create other variables as well to be under a particular thing, maybe size, spacing and the likes. But for now, let's focus on color. So I'm going to add all the colors that we're going to use for the project. So I'm going to add gunmetal, which is one of the colors that we're going to use. And then I'm going to hit there, put the code, add another variable. This is baby powder. Switch the colors as well. Add another variable color. So this is walnut brown, and then switch the color as well. Now this battleship and beaver are basically going to be my colors for hero, text, and some of the designs that we're going to have on this build. So basically make sure that when you're numbering them and when you're giving them names, you're going to select the ones that you're going to use for headers and the ones that you're going to use for subheaders and the ones that you're going to use for plain text. Now this is how you set up the variable colors, right? And if I want to add another variables, now we're going to add another variables for spacing, although I already have it here, so I'm just still going to add it just so you see how I do it. So we're going to come to this plus sign and hit on create a new variable, just call it space and create. Now I have a new variable. Again, there's nothing here, so I'm going to click on new variable. So this time is going to be size. So I'm going to type space / menu gap. And I'm going to add another variable and I'm going to call it container padding. So now I'm going to put in the equivalents for these items. So I'm going to have this in rem, and I'm also going to have this also in rem. So for the menu gap, I'm going to have it at 1 rem. And then this one also, I'm going to have it at 1 rem as well. So this is just the spacing sizes. So if you check the downloads that you have, you would see that there are different sizes for each gap. So now we're going to add, so this is just for the base mode. Now we're going to have breakpoints. When we select a particular color or a particular item for a particular breakpoint, it automatically adds for the other breakpoint. So this is for the base breakpoint, which is the desktop version. And we're going to create a new mode. So when I click on select new mode, now I'm going to hit on automatic. I'm going to name this, I'm going to name it tablet, and I'm going to select tablet here and create. Also, I'm going to create another mode for mobile, and I'm going to select mobile, select automatic, make sure I select mobile here and create. So basically when I add this particular spacing to any item when we're building, automatically it will put in the spaces for the mobile. Now, the screen sizes are different, right? When I am building I'm going to select 0.75. So I want the menu gap to be 0.75. On mobile, it probably be 0.125 rem. So basically, and then also for the padding as well, I want it to be 0.5 rem and then 0.25 25 rem. What happens is that when I select this particular menu gap when I am designing, it's automatically going to put this item for the desktop, automatically put this item for the tablet, and automatically put this item for the mobile. So that helps you to sort of like build responsively, and so that when you get to move on different breakpoints and try to make some edits, there won't be a lot to edit. Your edits won't be much because everything is running automatically. So that's how you create variables. So I'm going to go ahead now and start building. All right, so this is my canvas and we're going to build. Now, it's important to understand how to build in Webflow. Now, in Webflow, we build in blocks, unlike Figma, where you get to add an item and drag it at any part of the screen where you want. However, in Webflow, we build in blocks. So we're going to have that in mind as we build. So the very first thing that we're going to build is the navigation system. Basically, that's the very first thing on the page of every website. So the navigation. So what we're going to do is we're going to build, now you can build navigation in two ways. You can either add the navigation elements when you click on the plus sign and then you simply search nav here. You can build it, with the nav bar. When you hit on this, automatically the navigation, drops in here and then you can start building. Now, you can build it like that or you can manually build a navigation. Now, building it this way does not allow us to have control over. Now it's practically just limited. So we're not going to do it this way. We're going to do it in a different way. So I'm going to build it in blocks, right? Using div blocks. So Command E or Control E on Mac and then type div and then just hit enter. Now this will name it nav bar and then we'll have to add another div. So Command E again, add another div. We'll call it nav wrapper. We need to add another div block, but first we're going to have 3 items inside this particular nav wrapper. So the very first one is going to be the image. So Command E as always and type image. Now add image to it and then still inside select the nav wrapper and add a div block. Now you can see that this is stacking vertically. However, I want it to stack horizontally. So what we're going to do is that we're going to select the nav wrapper and hit flex. So it's not going to be sideways, side by side. So basically we're going to leave it this way for now. And then inside the nav bar, inside the div block within the nav wrapper, we're going to name this menu item. So inside this particular menu item link, we're going to again Command E and then add a text link. So this text link is basically what we are going to have the navigation as. Basically, we will edit this text link first and call it menu item, or rather call it menu link. Now for this menu link, we're going to change the typography. Remember, we've already added these things on variables. So we're going to select, now this is going to be enter, and then the sizing is we're going to select the size, which is the paragraph size. Now for the weight, it's going to be medium, and then for height, make sure that you have it at, click on PX, leave it at 1 EM. So 1 EM for height is basically okay. And then we're going to remove the decoration, make sure that this thing is centered. And then for the color, we are going to use gunmetal. So you can see that this is how the variables is basically helping us to put in, the typography, the things that we already said before. Next thing that we're going to do is to duplicate this menu link. So I'm going to duplicate it into 4 places. So Control D or Command D on Mac, and then it's into 4 places. So what I'm going to do now, you can see that it's all stacked up. So I'm going to add the logo, this particular image. This is where I'm going to add the logo. So head over to the files that I already added before and select the logo. This is the logo, so select this. And now you can see that it's showing there, but it's still, all stacked up. So what I'm gonna do for the nav wrapper, I'm going to put in, some sort of like spacing in between all of them. So hit on where it says align, click on it, center it, and then where it says align, make it space between, basically. So space between, now it shifts this and there's a huge gap in between them. So I'm going to come to the menu item. Now we need to have some sort of like spacing going on. Again, we turn this to flex and we leave it to move, the direction to be horizontal. We'll have to put some sort of gap in between them, and the menu gap, select that. For variables, now you can see that there's some sort of gap, in between the text links. However, they are still too far apart. So what I'm going to do is that for the main nav bar, I'm going to, the main nav bar, I'm going to give it some sort of patterns to the left and to the right. So select pattern for spacing, hit this, and select container pattern under nav bar, which I already added before. Also for the right part, again, click this purple thing and scroll to where you have the container padding and add the padding. Obviously the padding is 1 rem, so you can see it here. So just add 1 rem of padding, and we can see that the text are all, you know, aligned to the top, and we'll have to do something about that. So come to the menu item, the div block for the menu item, click on this alignment and order, and make sure that it's in the center. Now, when you hit that, this automatically comes to the center. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this text links and change it to what it's supposed to be. So this will be about, this would be case studies, this would be services, this would be templates, and this would be services. Now, one more thing is that we would want to have a button on this menu. So what we want to do is that we're going to duplicate this as well. And now for the duplicates, we're going to make sure that we rename it and call it, you know, add another CSS item as CTA. So now it's also menu link and CTA. So what basically this happens is that whenever I change, if I change something to this, it's not going to affect either of these things. So select this, and I'm going to make the padding to be 1 rem. So have it at a pattern of 1 rem for left and right. And then I'm going to manually add a padding up top as 0.5 and below as 0.5 as well, 0.5 rem. So what now happens is that you can see that this keeps going up. So what I'm going to do is, again, just click on any of the previous menu link, go to align, and make sure that you bring it, you know, to the center as well, so it's aligned. So you can see here that this is looking like something that we can work with. Back to the last menu link, just going to change the name and change it to let's talk. So this is going to be a button, and we'll have to change the color of this particular button. So for the color, we're going to make it white. That's for the color of the text. And then for the background color, we're going to make it gunmetal. So you can see that it's now taking a little bit of shape. For the radius, we're going to, again, add from the variables. So under buttons, you can see variables, border radius. So you can see that it's a little bit curved. The button is a little bit curved. So this is building the nav bar on Webflow. Now we're not done. We're not yet done with the nav bar. So, but we're going to move on to other things and come back and finish up on the nav bar. So we're going to build another section, which is the hero section. So basically, so again, just like we did before, Command E, a div, and add a div. So this div, we're going to term it hero and leave it at that. And then add another div inside. So Command E again for div. And then this, we're going to call it hero wrapper. Select that. And inside this hero wrapper, we're going to add a div and a text. Again, Command E, a div. Now inside this particular div that we added, we're going to add an image. And then for this particular image, we're going to select what it's going to be. So this is the image that we want to be there, this particular hero icon here. We click on the hero wrapper again and add a H2 heading as well. So Command E and type H2 and select H2 heading, and there you have it. Or rather, just make it H3 instead of H2. And there you have it. Now, if you look at this, you can see that it's pulling it down, you know, inside the hero wrapper. You know, the items, the elements that we have there are all in a vertical manner. So again, go to hero wrapper, make sure that we click flex, and now it's all aligning horizontally. And for this heading, I'm going to change the text. So this is the text that I want to have inside of this. So I'm just going to make sure that I edit this text properly. So I'm going to scroll down to typography, make sure that I align it, select from my fonts, and then the font weight is going to be normal. The size is going to be, I'm going to select what the size should be. I'm going to change the height to 1 EM, and then the color as well, I'm going to change it to walnut brown. There you have it. It's looking like something that we can work with right now. So now we're going to head back to the hero wrapper, and we're going to make some changes, and we're going to change the background color of this. So I'm going to come to the background color and the backgrounds, and then select from the color I already already have there, which is baby powder. Now you can see that this stretches from left to right of the screen. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to give it a width of 50 view width. So we're going to start working with 50 view width first. I'm going to come to the first div block, which has the icon, and make sure that I give it some sort of padding. Make sure that I'm going to align the item inside it to the center and give it some sort of padding. So I'm going to change this to rem and give it some sort of 1.5 padding on all sides, 0.125 rem, or expand it a little bit and make it 0.5 on all sides. I'm going to change the background of that particular div block to alabaster, and I'm going to have it at a corner radius of 0.5. Same thing with the buttons as well. Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to give this to the icon and the text. I'm going to give it some sort of like breathing space. So I'm going to click on the hero wrapper and scroll all the way to the top where it says gap, and I'm going to make sure that it has the same gap as the nav bar. I'm gonna give it a 1 rem gap, and then come back to the text and make sure that I align it to the center. Also make sure that the whole items are aligned to the center in the hero wrapper. And then for the main hero itself, I am going to make sure that everything as well is aligned to the center. So I'm going to, again, the hero is on flex, so make sure is on block, and make sure I hit on flex and make sure that it's vertically aligned, and then just bring it all the way down from there. So it's going downwards. So every item that I add, so if for example I add a new div block and then it's right below this particular div block, the hero wrapper basically. So what I'm gonna do is I want this hero wrapper to come to the center. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to click on the hero wrapper and then come to align right under flex child, come to align and make sure that it's aligned to the center. So now you can see that this moves to the center. Now I'm going to give it a top margin. So I already had the top margin. Again, go to variables and select what my top margins would be. So this would be a 6 rem. So I'll just give it that. So it has some sort of breathing space between the menu and the item itself. So I am going to make sure that every item inside it are properly structured and centered. So I'm going to click on heading and I'm going to remove this margins that comes with. Just make sure that everything is set to 0, and I'm going to make sure that I also have a very good margin for the hero wrapper as well. So I'm going to have a padding inside. I'm going to use the previous padding that I had for the container, or I'm going to give it a padding of 0.5 rem, or maybe give it a 0.125 rem or 0.25 rem basically. So this makes a whole lot of sense. So also the button as well, make it 0.25 rem. For the view width, now this is set to 50 view width. Now this is a little bit stretched. I'm going to make it at 40 view width. So basically you can see that it's coming along nicely. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm going to focus on the second div block. Now within the second div block, I'm going to add a H1 text. So Command E and then type H, select H1. Now I'm going to add the text that I want to add to the H1 text. Now before I move further, there's something I noticed. So for the hero wrapper, I noticed that the corner radius is not set. So I'm going to set the border radius as well to 0.5 rem. So that way it's a little bit curved at the edge. Another thing I'm going to do basically is that I'm going to make sure that I add extra padding because 0.25 doesn't really do it for me. So leave it at 0.5 rem. So make sure that it's at 0.5. This one too is at 0.5. So this is 0.5 rem. Now head back to the H1 text as well. And this particular div block, I'm just going to call it heading. And for the text itself, I'm going to basically set it up. The font, I'm going to change it to Rethink Sans. The size, I'm going to change it to the major H1 that we had intended for it. And then set the height to 1 EM, and the weight is going to be bold. The color, I'm going to change this to gunmetal and align it to the center so there's no decorations, and this is good to go. So I'm going to add some sort of spacing between this particular text, and so I'm just going to remove the initial spacings that it came with under, just select the heading 2, come to spacing and remove the spacings there. Now it's all aligned. Now I can set the spacings that I want to set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to under spacing, under margin. I'm going to hit the hero wrapper and I'm going to give it a margin. So I'm going to give it a bottom margin of, I'm gonna select this and scroll to where I had spacing, and I'll give it a section padding of 1.5 rem. So there's some sort of space between these two. Also, I'm going to add another div block, or rather, instead of adding another div block, I'm going to add a paragraph. So Command E, paragraph, and then this paragraph, I'll change it to the text that I intended for it to be. So double click on it and then paste what I have there. I'm going to hit on paragraph and make sure that I set it to what it should be. First of all, remove this margin spacing under it and come down to the fonts. Go to my typography, select what it's supposed to be. The size, select what it's supposed to be because I already named it. And for the height, I'm changing it back to 1 EM. And for the color, I am going to give it a color of walnut brown. So this is what the color would look like. I'm also going to align it to the center. You know what? I'm going to put this paragraph in a div block basically. Now I don't have to do that, but I want to put it in a div block. So I'm going to click on this hero, Command E, add a div block, and drag this paragraph right under this div block. Now it becomes a child of this particular div block. So I'm going to give this div block and call it paragraph text. Just call it that and make sure that it's properly aligned. So I'm just gonna give it 1 EM, just make sure that, you know, for the div block as what I'm selected, the paragraph text, give it 1 EM. So I noticed that this is at 1 rem for the paragraph. So I'm just going to hit this paragraph, come to the typography, under height, make sure that it's at 1 EM and not 1 rem. So that gives it some sort of space. So I'm going to put a space between this text and this H1 text. So select the heading div block, come to spacing, and under margin, go to my variables and go to spacing and add this particular space under it. Now I'm going to make sure that this particular div block has some sort of paddings to the left and right. So I'm going to make sure that I give it a padding of 3 rem for the left hand side. So 3 rem for both sides basically. So this is how it's going to look like. I'd rather make it 5 rem, and this is basically how it looks like. So it's looking a little bit airtight. So for the EM, I'm going to make it 1.5 just so we can have some sort of like breathing space, but this doesn't look good, so take it a little bit back. So something that I noticed is that this particular hero wrapper, it's not properly aligned. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make sure that it is properly aligned. So I'm going to come here and hit on this heading and make sure I remove this 1.5 rem that is here. Just reset it just so we're clear on what it should be. Make it 0 and leave it there, and make sure that this is the one selected and it has like a 1.5 rem. So yeah, so this is airtight. So if I select this particular heading, so there are 2 headings. So I'm just going to make this heading and rename it, or rather add H1 to it. So for the heading 2, what I'm going to do for this particular div block is that the div block that I termed heading 2 is that I'm going to go to the spacing and make sure that there's a space between it and the other one. So I'm just going to click on this and make sure that there's some sort of space between these 2 texts. So I go back to the variants that I already added. Now, if you're finding it hard adding this variant, just select 1.5 rem. Now, this is coming along nicely. Now, I'm going to add 2 buttons. So I'm going to add inside this same hero, I'm going to add another div block. Now, I'm going to add 2 buttons inside this div block. So Command E and select button. So the very first button, I'm going to customize it and then duplicate it. So this particular button, we're going to change the background of this button. So scroll down to backgrounds, change the background to gunmetal, and then change the text. So come to the typography, change the text to paragraph text. Also change the font sizing to paragraph as well, and then change the color to white, and then the height, leave it at 1 EM, and make sure that it's centered, and then remove any decoration that is there. So this, I'm going to make sure that this is set to normal. And yeah, so we're a little bit, so I'm going to set the radius of the button as well. So I'm going to move down to radius and set it at border radius for button. So it's a little bit curved. I'm going to make sure that it's properly padded, and I'm going to select padding for the button. So padding for, just going to make it 1 rem for left, right, and top and bottom as well. And then for the bottom, make sure that it's also equally, or for the top, I'm going to manually add 0.5 rem, and then for the bottom as well, I'm going to manually add 0.5. Can equally change it to 7.5 rather. So just change this to 7.5, change this as well to 7.5, to 0.75 rather, not 7.5. So this is starting to look more like it. So I'm going to give you some sort of breathing space between this text and this button. So I go to the paragraph text that we had initially, come under spacing, the bottom margin, I'm going to select the variable that we have for it. So I'm going to go to spacing, under spacing, I'm going to go and select the margin that I have there. Now I'm going to duplicate this particular button, Command D, now it's duplicated. Now I'm going to add some sort of spacing between these two buttons. So I'm going to first of all make this div block, flex, and it's going to, flex direction is going to be horizontally, and I'm going to add a gap in between them. So I'm going to scroll down to where I have my gap and use the menu gap as well. Now, if you notice, this is aligned to the left, so we want to, make it centered. So under align, so make sure that I hit the center and the two buttons are aligned to the center basically. So I'm going to change the text for the button. So this is gonna say learn more, and this is gonna say book a service. So now these two buttons have the same color. However, we want one to be different. So I'm going to come to the second button. Now it has, the CSS title of button. I'm going to add second to it. So whatever change I make to this is not going to be affected by this. So I'm going to come to and scroll all the way down to the backgrounds and make sure that I disconnect it from the variable. So just click on this particular unlink button from the variable. Now it's no longer linked to the variable. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna click on this plus sign here, click on gradient, and I'm going to shift this towards this direction. So make it 45 degrees. And what I'm gonna do is that for the black, I'm going to replace it with this color. And for the other side, I'm going to replace it with this color. So I'm going to change the text color inside this as well. I'm going to change it from white to gunmetal, and I'm going to change the weight as well to medium. So basically this is how it's going to look. So still enter, medium, centered, remove the decor. Now I'm going to add some sort of line borders to the button, and I'm going to change the colors of that particular button to baby powder. That gives it some sort of you can see it a little bit more. So if you're looking at this particular website now, it's coming along nicely. Now the next thing that we're going to add to this particular is some sort of images, right? So we're going to add 3 images to this particular website as we're building it. So still click on the hero on the left hand side here and Command E, add another div block. Now this div block, I'm going to term it image grid. So this image grid, I'm going to, under layouts, instead of hitting flex, this time around, I'm going to make it a grid. But before I do that, I am going to add another div block within it. So just select the image grid navigator, under navigator, and then come to the layout and select grid. So now it's in a grid of 4. I'm going to make it a grid of 3 columns and only 1 row. So that's what I want. And I'm going to make sure that there's a gap between them, which is 1 rem between each of the cards, and it's going to be stretched. So for the div block within this, I'm going to call it image card. So img card, that's short for image card. So under this div block, Command E again, add an image. So what's going to happen is I'm going to replace this image with this and close. And now I'm going to duplicate this into 3 places. So Command D. So now I'm done with this. Now I'm going to come to the image card and then duplicate it into 3 places. So now I'm going to remove the images for the other 2. So the second one, hit the image and hit the settings icon and make sure that I change the image to what I want it to be there, which is this one, this image. And then for the last one, I'm going to change the image as well to what I want it to be there. So replace image and replace it with this one. So now that the 3 images are been replaced, I'm going to make sure that I add some sort of padding to left and right. So I come to the spacing and make sure that I have some sort of pattern going on here. So I go to the variables that I already put in before, and I have it at 1.5 rem on this side. Also come to the other side and also have it at 1.5 rem as well. So there's some sort of spacing on these sides. Now, so far, let's look at what we've built and how we've built the hero section. So we're going to click on this little play button here, and it's going to show us what we've built. Now, if you look at it, you can see that this and this, they are still closed together, and also the menu section is also not allowing the space at the top to breathe, and these are way too close to the right edge. So we're still going to fix all of that. So first we're going to fix this. So I'm going to come to this block where we have the buttons, and first of all rename this buttons card. So I'm going to give it a margin of, come to what we selected earlier and go under spacing and give it a section pattern of 0.6. So we'll leave it at that. So now we're going to go back to play button and preview what we did. Now it's looking a little bit better than we left it. All right, so now that we've seen how this looks, so we're going to get back into the canvas and continue building. So we're going to add the next thing, which is another div block separate from the hero section. This is where we're going to add some sort of social proof. So we're going to click on the body. Now this is outside the hero. We're going to click on the body and Command E or Control E on Windows and hit div block. Now this div block, we're going to give it a style title of social proof. So call it that, just leave it that way. Now I'm going to create another div block. So Command E again, another div block inside this. I'm going to call it wrapper. So SP for social proof, and then wrapper, so social proof wrapper. And inside this social proof wrapper, I'm going to have 2 extra div blocks. So Command E for another div block, and then just duplicate this particular, so Command D or Control D for you to duplicate the particular div block that you already have. So what I'm going to do is that the first div block, I'm going to add a text inside of it. So Command E and add paragraph as well, or let's add H3 text. So we're going to have a H3 text inside of it, and I'm going to put what the text, just put what the text will be. So here I'm going to make sure that I set it. So go to spacing, make sure that I remove this, and also remove the button pattern as well. Just make sure that all is set before I start editing it properly. And I'm going to come to Arial, the typography, again, hit the purple icon and change it to what I want it to be, which is enter. And the weight, I'm going to change this to medium. The size, I'm going to change it to what's that I set it out to be from the variables, and I'm going to make the height 1 EM. For the color, I'm going to change it to beaver. So now I'm going to make sure that it's aligned to the center, and I'm going to give this particular social proof wrapper, I'm going to give it some sort of pattern between that and this. So I'm going to come to this image grade, from the hero section. All right, I'm going to come to the hero section itself, go to spacing, and then under spacing, the bottom margin, I'm going to set the variable, set it to section 0.6 or rather 6 rem. So what now happens is that there's a big space between the hero section and this text. So the 2 sections, so this is the hero section, so I'm probably going to rename it hero section, and then the social proof section as well, rename it social proof section. So this is an entirely different section on its own. Have the social proof wrapper, and we have a div block that is housing the heading. So I'm just going to call it SP, social proof heading. The other div block that is inside the SP wrapper, we're going to add a couple of images to it. So we already have those images, so we're just going to add it here. So what I'm going to do is select that particular div block, give it a class name of SP images. So that's SP basically social proof. Select the SP images and then Command E or Control E and select image. So we're going to have this image and duplicate it into 5. So before we do that, let's select what the image should be here. So this is the image I want it to be here. So now before we duplicate this image, you have to make sure that this is properly set. As you can see that it's way too large. And I'm just going to set this at 135 by 45. I think this works. So now I'm going to duplicate this into 5 places. So Command D until it's into 5 places. And I'm going to change the rest of the image, just replace them with the other ones as well. So I have this at 78 by 77. I think this makes a whole lot of sense for this particular image. And then the next one, change the image as well. For the next one, change the image as well and have this at 59 by 59. And then it's now looking properly aligned. And then go to the next image and change it as well. And probably have this at 129 or rather 122 by 39. Yeah, this makes a whole lot of sense. And for the last one, change the image as well and change this to 130 by 48. So this makes a whole lot of sense. So now you can see that these images are stacked up together. So what we will naturally do is, first of all, to make sure that they are in flex and they're moving horizontally. And now I'm going to add a gap between them. I'm going to use a custom gapping and I'm going to call it 3 rem or 1.5 rem. So this makes a whole lot of sense. Now if you're still looking at it, you can notice that it's aligned to the left. So I'm just going to come to align and make sure that it's in the center, and then there is no breathing space between this and this. So we're going to come to SP wrapper. Make sure you click on SP wrapper and change it to flex. Now if you change it to flex, it's going to look like this, but you're going to come to direction and hit the down arrow button and it's going to look a little bit more like this. And we're going to give it some sort of gapping and we're going to give it a gap of 2 rem. So you can type 2 rem in the space there and this is how it's going to look like. There's one more thing that is missing from this particular section, which is a line and padding as well. So I'm going to select this particular and make sure that I pad it, give it some sort of margin. So I'm going to select the left margin first and scroll all the way down to div margin and give it a margin of 3 rem, and also the other side also give it a margin of 3 rem as well. So it's now looking like this. And I think I'm also going to give this particular grid card margins as well. So I remember I gave it a padding of 1.5 inside the card, so I'm going to give it a margin as well. So just give it this margin on the left and another 3 rem on the right. So I'm now going to take this out. I'm going to take the initial 1.5, I'll just reset it and see how it looks like. So I'm going to play this and see how it looks like. So this is how it's currently looking. So we have this and we have this. Now I'm going to make sure that there's a line between this and the next section. So we're going to go back into the canvas. Now we're in the canvas, we're going to continue building. So back to the social proof, and under the social proof you have the SP wrapper. So what I'm going to do now is that I am going to add another div. So Command E and type div and then add another div block. Now you can see that everything that we're building is within div blocks, and that is how things are coming along nicely. So it's either I add this div block or I use the initial div block on the images to create a line. So I can do both, right? But first I need to align these images to the center because they are not aligned, they are aligned to the top. In the SP images, just click on any of the image and make sure that you align them to the center. So click on the second one, align it to the center. Basically I'm just going to align one and then give the others a class. So this is image, so I'm just going to come here and give this a class of image, give this one also a class of image, and you can see it's automatically aligning for each and every one of them. So give this one class of image as well and give this one a class of image. Now to get this, you need to be in the social proof section, images, and then select one image, come to align and make sure you align it to the center, and then it will have a class name of image, and then go to the other images and give them the same class name and it will automatically align. So whatever you did on this one will automatically automatically apply to the rest of them. So you can see that they are all aligned to the center. Now what we can do is that I can choose to use the SP wrapper. So if I remove the third div block that I added for now, I can choose the SP wrapper. I can choose to use it as my line, or I can choose to use this particular div block for the images. What I'm going to use is I'm going to use the SP wrapper. So I'm just going to click on the SP wrapper div block, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says borders. So you can see the border radius, you can see the borders, and then the style, and make sure that I select the line down and select this. What's going to happen now is that only the bottom line is showing, and I'm still going to show you how that looks, but I'm going to make sure that I select a random rem and give it 1 rem. 1 rem is too much, as you can see the line here, so I'll make it 0.5. 0.5 is practically still too much, so I'll make it 0.125. I think this is much better, and I'm going to change the color, so from black to walnut brown. So if I give this social proof a margin, so scroll up all the way to the top. So for social proof, so section padding, I'm going to use that and give it a section padding of 6 rem. So the next section that is coming along, you're going to see that line. So we're going to hit the body again and Command E. We're going to add the next section. So we're going to add a div. Now you can see that particular line that we created. Now you can see that this line is way too close to these images and it's a little bit thick, but we're going to leave it as thick as that. But we're going to make sure that it gives some sort of like a breathing room between the line and the images. So we're going to head back into the social proof wrapper. For the social proof wrapper, what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to come back to that line and come to the SP images, click on the SP images and have some sort of margin between it and the line. So I'm going to give it a margin of 2 rem or make it a margin of 3 rem. So now you have a space between images and this particular line. So all that is done from the social proof images. So we're going to continue building from the next section. So this section is going to be the about. So we're going to build it in a 2-column system. So basically we're going to have two columns within this particular div. So this, we're going to call it the about, and then Command E again. Under about, we're going to add another div block, call it about wrapper, and then under this about wrapper we're going to have 2 div blocks. So Command E for a div block, and I'm just going to duplicate the particular, so just Command D, and in the first div block we're going to call this about image, and Command E to add an image inside it. So just type image and it adds an image. We're going to select the image that we want to have there, so we're going to select this particular image. So this is the image that we selected. As you can see now, it's full screen, but we're still going to work it out. And then for the next one, we're going to have a couple of texts. So a H2 text and a paragraph and then a button. So under this div block, we're going to Command E, add a H2 text, again Command E, add a paragraph, and then the same div block, Command E again, add a button. Now we can see that this is all, as you're adding things, they're going vertically. Again, we're going to come to the about wrapper, change it from block to flex, and now it's a little bit side by side. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to come to about image and give this particular div block a width, a view width, or rather a width of 50%. So make it 50, and then for the text, 50% as well. So now you can see that we have both, at least they are all, both occupying the same amount of space, left and right. We're going to start giving them spaces. So first of all, we're going to click on the about section. So we're just going to rename this. So come to the about section and give it a margin. Go to my variables. Again, I set this and have the margin on the left and have the margin as well on the right. Now we have some sort of space between, and now what I'm gonna do is that I want some sort of space to be in between these two. So I am going to come to the about wrapper. I am going to give this gap under layout. So you have this gap, I'm going to give it a gap of 1 rem, and then I'm going to change the text that I want to be here and just fill them out. So I'm gonna copy, paste this in here, and then for paragraph, paste that in here as well. What I'm gonna do now is that I am going to give them their own classes. So for this, it will be a class name of right block. And then instead of this being about image, I'm going to rename it to left block. So we have the right and the left block. So in the right block, we have the headings. So I'm going to change the headings, and I'm going to make sure that I remove the spacings here so that when I'm setting the spaces, nothing shifts out of proportion. So for this H2, again, we're going to give it the typography that we give to the H1 text. And then for the paragraph as well, make sure that there is no paddings or margins, and then give that the paragraph text. Go back to the heading and select the weight. So I want it to be medium. So for the size, I'm going to give this the size of 3 rem or 1.5 because it's a H2 and not a H1. So give it a sizing of a 1.5 rem, which is really not good. And then we'll give it a size of 2. And then for the height, change it to 1 em. And then for the text, change the size to the paragraph text. Again, give it 1 em as well. So just to make sure that things are properly aligned. Now I'm going to have a space between the H1 and paragraph. So I'm going to have some sort of margins between them. So I'm going to go to spacing, select margin, give it 1.125 rem. It's going to be the spacing. Also, I want to have a space between the button and the subheading as well. So I'm going to same margin, bottom margin, give it a padding of 2 rem. So this is now looking like something that we can work with. However, there is no top and bottom padding for the items inside the about wrapper. So we're going to make sure that we have some sort of like a top and bottom padding so that we can have space for this to breathe. But before I do that, I have to come to the right block and make sure that I hit the right block and align everything to the center. So it has some sort of space automatically on its own. And for the button, I'm just going to come to the class. Instead of building a new button, I already have a button tag, and select the button tag, and automatically it appears here. Now, I want this to be a different color because remember I have 2 buttons. One has this color and the other has this color. Now I want the button to have this particular gradient color. So I'm just going to give it second. So it has 2 style selectors. So the button and the second button basically. And when I select that, you can see the text changes here automatically. And I'm going to type learn more. So now we have, a little bit of congruency going on here. And I want to give inside this right block, I want to give it a right and left padding. So I am going to come to the spacing section. So I'm just going to give it a padding of 1 rem. So just the left and right, just give it a padding of 1 rem on both sides. And now it has some sort of like space on both sides. So yeah, so this works, and this particular text is a little bit too big. So I'm just going to try and bring it down to 2 rem or maybe 2.5. Yeah, this works much better for me. Now we can go ahead and preview what we've built so far just to see how it's coming along. And you can see there's no animation, there's nothing yet. We're not focusing on that for now. We're just trying to have a build for now, and we can focus on animation later on. Now we've seen how it's coming along, and yeah, this is coming along nice. So now in this video, we've covered the canvas overview. We've had a canvas overview. We've covered the variables. We've built a header. We've built a hero section, an image section, the social proof, and we've had the about as well. Now, this is the first part of this video, so you might want to check the second part to complete the build. There you go. You just built the first half of a professional homepage in Webflow, and that itself is a solid start. So if this helped you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now in part 2, we are finishing this site. We are adding case studies, services, and the filter to tie everything together. So if you're ready to keep building, check the link in the description, or you can click on this playlist to jump straight into it.